Okay, thank you, Tanya, and thank you, Corel, for giving me this opportunity to share my journey with you with Painter. Um, First of all, I wanted to start out with a little bit of my history from the time I was about 3 years old. My mom knew she had a budding artist in her midst when she presented me with my first box of crayons, and I proceeded to draw on the walls of my bedroom. My mom was also an artist, so it was really no problem for her to have one wall dedicated to this purpose. And I think at this point, this is really where my journey with art began, because from the time I was very young, it was fostered in me, and I continued to enjoy art throughout my life. After graduation from high school, I went on to study in art in earnest at Cabrillo College on the beautiful Monterey Bay. Here is where I spent most of my life, married and raised my son, and still kept art as a part of my life, kept it very closely to me. Most of us know when we're raising a family, we get away from art oftentimes, and it becomes a little bit difficult for us to get back to those wonderful things that we enjoy when our life is so full of raising family. But eventually I was able to get back to working with my first love, traditional watercolor, and attended workshops, and but very soon I found something very special was about to enter my life, and that was Painter. After we left Hawaii, I moved to the beautiful island of Hawaii, and Hawaii, I should say, and up to an area up Mauka called Kamuela. Many of you may know it as Waimea, and it is so called because it's the home of the famous Parker Ranch. And on the right-hand side, you can see a picture of our cottage and what looked out onto the beautiful pastures of the Parker Ranch. And we always had horses, and you know, just a beautiful scene. Looking out the front of our place, we would see Mauna Kea, and at the back, the Kohala Mountains. Waimea, its meaning is reddish water, and it refers to the tint of the streams after they filter through the hapu forests and the Kohala Mountains. And it was really during my life in Kamuela that I found color and beauty that I had never really experienced before. And I even started creating color palettes for Painter to remind me to never forget the amazing greens and reds of this beautiful area. From Hawaii, this is pretty extreme. We found that we were so far away from family, we really needed to get back to the mainland. So we decided and settled in another beautiful area called Prescott, Arizona. And we're about 5,500 feet, so we're higher altitude, lots of beautiful ponderosa and pinyon pines. And although it's very different, it's a different kind of landscape, it has its beauty as well. I first discovered Painter, interestingly enough, by passing a neighboring building called Meta Creations, which was located in Scotts Valley, California, and this was back when I lived in Santa Cruz. And I was working for Seagate Technology at the time. I happened to get on the web and found out more about Painter and Meta Creations and Painter 5 and then Painter 6. And so it's been a long journey to Painter X3. I soon discovered an online school which offered a class on Painter, and you know, the rest is history. I soon became the primary course developer for an online school, creating a Painter course for them, and then went on to form Painter Talk Forum, which many of you have enjoyed over the years, and of course Digital Art Academy, my online school, where we focus on Corel Painter. Our DAA family includes wonderful Skip Allen and Elena Moore Kelly. I'm a traditional watercolor artist as well as a traditional artist, as a digital artist, and I enjoy combining the best of both worlds to emulate the look of traditional watercolor media in my digital work. And I wanted to just kind of go over and show you a few of these images that I've created. Over the past summer, I've been working a lot with my traditional watercolors, and I very often will incorporate background textures and just have more fun creating textures in watercolor that I tend to use in my digital work as well. This happens to be a little series of figs that I created in Painter, but ended up as a traditional paint, kind of like a mixed media piece where I utilized pastels, inks, and of course colorful tissue papers to create more of a collage type effect with it. So there is a real back and forth that I go between digital and traditional, and in my world the two of them work beautifully together. This happens to be a traditional watercolor that I just completed, and I thought how fun it would be to scan it into Painter and have some fun with overlays and textures and using chalk to bring in different textures, and this is what I played with this one. So I had a lot of fun finishing it off in Painter. Landscape painting is really where my heart is and where I seek my inspiration. And here are a few of my favorite pieces that I created in Painter. This one actually started out with a traditional watercolor, and then I finished it in Painter using one of my favorite brushes, the digital square pool blender, which is one of Skip Allen's wonderful brushes. This one is called Hot Peppers, and again it was an experiment with using some of the opaque mediums, chalk, Conte, and then working with some of my traditional overlays and textures that I had created, and then applied them as an overlay using different layer composite methods to achieve the effects that I was after. The texture that you see on the top here was created by using cheesecloth, which I laid down on heavy 300-pound watercolor paper, and then I colored, actually laid inks and watercolor washes over the top of it, let it dry, and then lifted it off after it had dried, and it creates these wonderful, wonderful designs and textures. This one is called Aspens in Early Fall, and it was just an exercise with some new brushes that I had been experimenting with, and it was just some play with color and impasto, and just lots of fun to create. This one is called Island Calm, and again it was an exercise in working with a low horizon line. And these types of paintings can be very effective when you want to really emphasize the sky. A lower horizon line will always bring attention to most of the real estate that you've created at the top of the canvas, and a great opportunity to work and emphasize clouds and atmospheric conditions. This one is called Autumn Sunset on the Lake, and again it's just one of my favorites. Again, a very atmospheric and seasonal piece. Golden Light, which is a fairly recent painting, and this one I was working again with atmospheric conditions and also working with one of my new brushes, Impressionist Cloud Brush, that I wanted to really play with, and I think I had a good opportunity of working with it with the lower horizon line painting. This one was done with called Late December, and it was done with the Sargent brush in its entirety. This is absolutely one of my favorite brushes to use, the Sargent brush, and I have it actually in I have several Sargent brushes that I've saved as custom brushes so I can achieve just the look that I'm after. This one happens to be just one brush that I use called the Sargent WOMC, and it is a custom brush. And again, it was just another seasonal type of painting. I also work a bit with portrait work, and I have to say that portrait is probably my most challenging area in Painter. I love doing portrait work, and I do find it very challenging, and for that reason I think that's why I enjoy doing it, because I feel that it's one of those areas that I can continue to expand upon, but I always find that I have to have an image that really holds my attention through the entire process. And this happens to be just a little picture of my beautiful granddaughter Quinn. I also do work with collage, which is one of my loves. I actually took inspiration very early from Jeremy Sutton with collage. And from that point on, I've really enjoyed the process. This one happens to be one of the very first paintings I did called Remember the Heroes. It's a collage of my dad from World War II that I did print and finally did lots of embellishing on, and actually took many of the images that you see in here and actually embellished them right onto the original print. So it's a beautiful finished piece that is really dear to me. Again, another type of atmospheric piece, and this one oftentimes I'll do these just as exercises to strengthen my skills with atmosphere, and this one is called Seaside Farm, and it's one of those paintings I just like to go to every once in a while to feel good. It's one of those feel-good paintings that you kind of like to linger in a little bit. Another kind of atmospheric piece with watercolor, one of my favorite mediums to work with in Painter. And this is a before of a sketch that I created and started working into using colorized blend mode, colorized composite method on Painter. And this was the final painting where I actually just increased the colors and then added some overlays of rain and some actual textures as well. And that's it for me. And again, I want to thank you for joining me today and letting me share my journey with you. It's been a great one.
Hey, Karen. There's been a lot of comments and many questions asking, because you've referred to so many of your brushes, are any of these available online?
Yes, they are. At KarenBonakerArt.com, there is a little panel on the side of my blog that's called the box panel, and there's quite a few brushes there that you can pick up. However, if there's a specific brush that you would really love, just let me know, and I'm always happy to share brushes or any resources that I have.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. And I just learned so much about you that I did not know, Karen. That was a really great presentation, and I love your mixed media techniques. You do such a wonderful job with those.
Thanks so much.
Peggy, I see that you've got the control there. So when you're ready, take it away.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, Tanya and Steve and to Carol, and very happy to be here today. And Karen, I am so inspired just by seeing what you did, just phenomenal. And you know, the way you integrate all the different ways that you work is just gorgeous, gorgeous. I want to get your impressionist cloud brush right away. So I wanted to let you guys know I'm broadcasting from Jeremy Sutton's studio in foggy San Francisco, and we have just actually, we're in the middle of the Gatsby Impressionist workshop that's centered around going to a fabulous vintage event and taking pictures in Oakland and we're using X3 and having such a great time. So I just wanted to let you know where I am right now and what we're doing. So for me today, I'm going to focus on my traditional artwork primarily. So as you can see, I am a drawer, first of all, and like Karen, started at a very, very early age. Always drew. That was my main interest, actually, both as a youngster and also as a high school student, frankly. I never touched paint, and it was way before the digital era, way, way before. And so for me, drawing was always something that I enjoyed doing and had a great love of, and to this day is part of my work, whatever I'm doing. So this is a picture of the beautiful ocean that I grew up on that is south of Boston. It's a town called Cohasset, and as you can see, there's a lot of sky and water, and this was a really important early influence for me. That is not an easel I had as a child on the seashore, but actually when I went back there many, many years later to explore the ocean and to do paintings, plein air style, right on the water. And let me show you another one here. Aha! This is from when I later went to the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts in Philadelphia. Previous to that, I had gone to the University of Pennsylvania, and in fact I studied biological anthropology. But it actually took me many years before I was able to pursue art full-time. I took classes at night. I went to some really great places in Philadelphia that offered really terrific training, but it wasn't until I was 30 that I actually could enroll full-time. And so what you're seeing here is my rather funny picture of me with fashion from the 90s. And these are some very large landscapes that are typical of the kind of painting I was doing when I left the academy. And to some extent you can see in the upper one thinking about abstraction, but still very much a figurative kind of person. And here's a picture from National Geographic, believe it or not. This is the cast hall at the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts, and that's Bart the carriage horse, who is one of our favorite models. And you can see that we were literally surrounded by history and tradition of the craft. We drew from these sculptures endlessly, and occasionally even had a horse in there, which was wonderful. And that's me in the corner sitting on the radiator. That was fun. We had a great time. So here's one of my landscapes. It was what I would call a transitional piece for me. When I was alone in my studio with no art school or art teachers telling me, you know, giving me exercises, which, by the way, I loved. I would still be in art school today if that were possible. I'd be on the 30-year plan. But this is one of the early landscapes that I did out of school that actually had the beginnings of my ideas about combining music and landscape together. And while this looks like a very interesting but traditional Western landscape, and I created it using a photograph that I'd taken in the Southwest near Mesa Verde, I think. It actually had the beginnings of a sort of sonata form to it, and it was how I started out, merging my interests in painting music and creating works that combined landscape and music. Here's a shot of my studio from Philadelphia, which was wonderful. Oh, my dog Griffin. And I was lucky enough to have a Loner Steinway in my studio that my friends needed a spot for. So I would actually have artists come in and play, and I was able to create paintings while they were playing, as well as listening to recordings, of course. Now here's one of the pieces I did from a project for the Philadelphia Orchestra. I was very lucky to meet with the artistic director there after I'd been painting my musical landscapes, and I'd had a few shows in a gallery in Philadelphia in the Old City area. I met with the orchestra, and they decided it would be really cool to have me as their painter in residence, essentially, for a year. So this is one of the first paintings I created in a series of 6. Very large pieces. They're 4 feet wide by 7 feet tall. And this is inspired by a rather abstract piece of music called Varese Arcana, very famous early 20th century piece that was very strange and sort of crystalline and explosive and almost like really more like rock music, I think, than you might imagine traditional Baroque orchestra. Let me also just mention my music connection is that I'm not a performer. I really can't read music, and notes don't mean much to me. So you won't actually see any little black notes or music signature in any of my, musical paintings. But my hope is that you'll feel a sense of the music. I am a professional listener, I guess you could say, and interpreter of the music in paint at this point. So rather abstract treatment of a rather abstract piece of music. And here's another one, which was inspired by a very beautiful piece of music by Toru Takemitsu, who was the composer laureate of Japan for many, many years and wrote beautiful works for Western orchestra. And it's a very spatial and open and airy and brilliant, literally, piece of music. And so those feelings about that music that I had really guided me in terms of choosing my color palette and the way that I handled the paint in this one. And here's a shot of a show that I also had in Philadelphia at the Museum of Jewish Art. And these paintings were all inspired by music from the Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur holidays, and lots of traditional tunes as well as contemporary composers using music from that canon. Here's one of them up close. You can see the textures and the color. It was really challenging, actually, to work with this music because it had this, sacred association, but I wasn't going to paint figuratively any of that. So I was able to, try to extract some of the emotional content of it and create these large sort of swirling and atmospheric pieces. So this is one of the earliest pieces I created. It's about 3 by 4 feet, I think, and it's inspired by the music of Claude Debussy, who to this day is my favorite composer to listen to, mostly because of the fact that there is so much rich color, there is a tremendous sense of air and light and atmosphere, and all of the things you would expect in an Impressionist painting, in fact. And he, like the Impressionist painters, did not want to be called an Impressionist composer, but nevertheless, you can hear that in his music. It was very Impressionist sounding to me. So that's what I interpreted here. So that's one of them. Here's another one from that series, inspired by solo piano work. I usually scale the paintings to the type of music, I should say, to essentially the size of the music. If it's a very huge piece for orchestra, I'll try to do a huge painting. If it's a small etude or a solo piano work, let's say, I'll do sort of, more like 3 feet size paintings. And some of you may think that's still pretty large, but honestly, for me, it's just as easy to do a large painting as a small one. So this is a Chopin etude, tiny little piece of music, and a very small work that was very simple and light, as the music is. And here we move on to San Francisco. This is my studio here in, at the time, sunny San Francisco. You can see my setup there. And here's a really huge piece. This is a 20-footer that's canvas that I unrolled, straight from the canvas roll onto the wall, and I paint directly with my oils and with acrylics. Actually, in this case, I think I used acrylics to begin with. And this is interpreting jazz music, sort of a combined composition for, actually, it was Count Basie music. And then you see, sorry, this is such a blurry picture because I got it from the web, but this is somebody's wedding in front of the painting, which was at a cafe on exhibition. And you can see here it's been stretched. And it's a fine backdrop. So this one is actually one of the series I did for the San Francisco Chamber Orchestra. And again, it's considerably more abstract than some of the ones where you see more of the nature references like the Debussy, because the music is Bela Bartok's Romanian folk dances. And I was commissioned to create works for the San Francisco Chamber Orchestra, and I would paint the paintings ahead of time, and then they would post them up on the stage, and people could see them while they played the music. Here are 3 pieces that I made that were inspired by Stravinsky's piece called Octet. And I was actually thinking of 3 different artists when I made the 3 paintings for the 3 movement. And the first one was, oh gosh, sorry, I totally forgot who that is. But anyway, the middle one was Alexander Calder and his whole sense of balançoire and his circusy feeling. The last one, Paul Klee. And I just remember the first one, Chagall, the wonderful French painter. So I was kind of associating painters more or less from the period of Stravinsky with the music. So I just finished last week a wonderful residency actually at the de Young Museum in San Francisco, and I was asked to be a working studio artist on display, showing people what I do and how I do it in this lovely, glorious gallery that is also a studio. And as you can see, it's a really cool space. They have these fabulous multimedia screens, and you can project onto them. So there's a lovely video that I would recommend that any of you want to see. There's a link on my website, and it was done by Bruce Dorn, who's a good friend of Painter, I know. And he created a nice piece showing the progress of the work for the San Francisco Chamber Orchestra. And at times it was quite relaxing for people to look at those screens. These young folks decided to have a good old nap there. You can see some of my other Debussy pieces behind. And here I am working on another Debussy piece, actually. It was really interesting actually working in front of other people outside of the privacy of my own space, and I actually grew to enjoy it. It was very nice to have an interested audience who sort of energized me as I was working. Here's some more you can see. You can probably guess by now that these are very likely to be inspired by Debussy or some impressionist music, and indeed they are. Those are preludes, and another one called Poisson d'Or, which means goldfish in French. And if you look very closely, you'll actually see a goldfish. I don't usually get pictorial, but it was there. And this is a close-up of, believe it or not, a jazz piece, but it's very impressionist sounding. Reflections, indeed, performed by Bill Evans, who's one of my favorite jazz pianists. And this was one of my references. I actually went up to the lily pond outside the museum and took pictures of the lily pads because I kept needing something physical to put into the painting, so I had my little iPhone sitting there. And some more rather large Debussy pieces. Another Poisson d'Or, or the goldfish, Debussy. And here's another one. When I do these paintings, I try to choose music that is truly great, meaning masterworks if possible. And I listen to Arthur Rubinstein, who's one of the great pianists of all time, to create these particular pieces. Another Debussy, little different treatment here. And then we have jazz and contemporary as well. In progress. Here's more Bill Evans. It's a piece of music called Blue and Green. So I, took my inspiration from the title as much as the sound. I had the pleasure of meeting these 2 lovely cellists outside the museum, and I said, why don't you come in and play for me, and I'll paint, even though I had no idea what they were going to play. And they said, well, we can do Baroque music. And I said, yeah, let's go for Baroque. Oh, sorry, bad joke. So they played, and in fact, they're students from the conservatory, and absolutely wonderful. They were playing some, I think it was Poulenc. Really nice. My friend Gloria Justin, who's a composer and violinist, also came into the De Young Gallery, and she created music for me to paint. Never been heard by anyone, including her, because she was creating it on the spot. And I have these, you can see kind of in the distance, some of the paintings that I began listening to her music. We had a performance so that folks could come and see and hear. Ta-da. And that brings me to the end of my little tour. Always happy when an exhibition is hung and out of the studio. So I really thank you all for your interest. And next time, you'll be seeing me go digital, bringing certainly my interest in traditional painting to X3.